Hello everybody, welcome to the patch 13.1 rundown. My name is Quinn. I will be guiding you through the patch notes for the purposes of flex, clash, and amateur level play. Most patch note shows have like an emphasis on pro play or like high level solo queue. But in this show, my intention is not to like have all the answers immediately. My intention is to focus on what matters for the general player, what matters for different levels of coordinated play, and what matters, like really, like how to generate questions moving forward into the patch, like what needs to be tested, right? Hopefully this should be a bit smoother than usual. I spent quite a bit of December trying to develop a system that should help me like accurately predict the impact of certain patches. I went all the way through like every season 12 patch and just kind of like assessed the impact with what data I had available. Yeah, so hopefully I'm not going to have predictors for like every little change, but hopefully we should be able to tell at a glance whether a change is actually meaningful for a champion's performance or not at different levels, right? So just keep in mind as we go into this. First of all, I've barely seen any of this. I have glanced at some of the notes like over the course of the last few weeks, like the Twitter previews and stuff like that, but I didn't really like dive deeply into them. We're going in blind, mostly partially semi-blind, unscripted content. And also don't forget that systemic changes and like major champion overhauls are the ones that are probably going to have a practical impact for most players, right? So let's get started with a mid-scope. So Jax is getting a mid-scope. Jax is, to my memory, the only champion getting a mid-scope that hasn't been in a pretty poor state before. At most levels of play, Jax has been pretty reasonable. Like, you wouldn't run to him as quickly as you would draft like a Fiora or something, but he definitely has a very valid place, especially when carry tops are running rampant. Right. Let's silence this. That was not silencing this. Or I should rephrase, right? I should rephrase. Not when I'm not implying that like carry tops are running rampant right now. I'm just saying like when carry tops are more pronounced, so Jax actually does have a very good place in the game, right? So what are they doing to him? I've been kind of out of the loop. So his Q no longer has an AP ratio, pretty negligible change for most people. Physical damage to magic damage on E. Bonus damage per attack dodged is 20% of the base damage. Oh, but we no longer have like a... Interesting. Okay. So Counter-Strike is now dealing percent max health damage rather than actually scaling with a physical damage ratio or with an AD ratio. It's dealing magic damage, so it's harder to itemize against Jax. This is going to be like a meaningful chunk, right? Grandmaster's Might is still dealing magic damage. So yeah, they've changed it to base damage because it's no longer scaling with a ratio or something. So if you're playing like AP Jax for whatever reason, you're not amplifying this. You're just amplifying this, which is higher at later ranks, right? It's up by 20. Grandmaster's Might, cooldown is up early. The third hit bonus magic damage is down a little bit because it now has a bit of burst damage on it. A 100% AP ratio. 150, 250, so it's, yeah, plus 100 damage per level, AoE. If he hits a champion, he gains 25, 45, 65, plus 40%. Okay, so... Ooh, hang on, let's actually check out the comparison to his old numbers then. With the resistances. How much is his durability changing? So, Jax's bonus AD was 30, 50, 70 plus 50% bonus AD. Now, it will be plus 40% bonus AD, 25, so... Okay, so he's getting the same amount if he hits one champion, right? Because that should equal 40, right? That's actually slightly more on base. To 70. Oh, hang on. Percentage armor increase. As well as 60% of that value as MR for the next 8 seconds. During this time, the passive damage applies every second attack instead of every third. This is weird. Okay. Obviously, I don't have any, like, specific predictors for, like, a big mid-scope like this. I'm just trying to visualize what Jax looked like before and what he looks like now. Okay, so there will no longer be a situation in which Jax can just press R while running away from a gank to kind of survive some fire after him. He is going to have to brawl his way to his defenses, but he's going to gain quite a lot. I mean, I'm assuming this is total armor, right? Is this total armor, or is this just % bonus armor? Like, this reads like it's total armor. Okay. I mean, like, ultimately, this changes virtually nothing. This change, we're only looking at this max health ratio. And it's just, how does the ultimates change? How does the ultimate change everything? I'm trying to visualize how Jax might be incentivized to itemize after this. Like... Because, like, okay, he was never a Zerker Greaves champion. It was always, like, Tab Eyes. It was always Merc Tread. Like, the defensive boots actually have value, because Jax is an auto-attacker and wouldn't gain a ton of value from Lucidity boots. Okay, two things come to mind. One is a crackpot theory. One is a line of questioning. Because I'm not going to be able to immediately predict the impact on Jax's, like, performance. In fact, I wouldn't be too surprised if, like, Jax started reasonably good and ended reasonably good, like, maybe a bit stronger, maybe a bit more pronounced. I can't predict exactly how this changes his matchups, but the crackpot theory is Jax is actually one of the 4 champions that qualifies for being a melee bot laner, just off his own power, which sounds stupid, right? It sounds really, really, really stupid. But let me pull up my notes on this bit. To be a melee bot laner, you must have mobility or ranged CC to close the gap against AD carries. You must have some extreme defensive steroid as a basic ability or passive to protect against ranged opponents. And you must scale into a competent team fighter or, like, wave clear engine, right? So, 3 champions hit all 3 of those criteria: Yasuo, Neela, and Cho'Gath. I've been advocating for Cho'Gath AD carry for a while now, and, like, it's starting to see play in Korea, which is kind of exciting. I saw, like, Hanwha Life video. But Jax is in there too, right? Jax is in there without the team fighting part. Jax actually has all the tools he needs to play a competent bot lane phase into the right matchup. It's just he doesn't do anything after that, so he doesn't see play. He's pretty bad. I'm wondering if this actually empowers him to team fight more effectively, if there's a set of itemization that, you know, just makes him ungodly tanky. Because right now, Jax is a very, very pure... No, I shouldn't say that. I was about to misspeak. I was going to say Jax is a very pure, edge team fighter. Like, at the end of the day, he still can contribute something to a team fight. Like, a full team fight. He still is an edge team fighter, but, like, Counter-Strike is already set up to, like, give him some situational tools in, like, pure 5v5, right? So I'm actually wondering if this makes Jax more flexible in what he does in the mid game. If you can actually draft him in situations in which you want to team fight around him. I mean, he's still not healing or shielding himself, so he doesn't have, like, inherently broken enchanter synergies, but I would imagine but losing the AD ratio, does this compensate? Like, So basically, I can't predict exactly what this will do to Jax. Because, like, every time I come up with a line that says, I think this, I look at another property where I'm like, ooh, I can't exactly predict that bit. Like, % max health damage rather than an AD ratio, I would assume to mean that he, like, hits the generic enemy more effectively, but, like, specific squishies with, like, on-second item spike, where his AD ratio would be, like, at its best relative to his opponents when he's not then pivoting into defensive itemization. He's probably slightly worse at killing the generic squishy, except then this also comes in. So you see how I start to, like, doubt myself and, like, double back on certain things, right? Like, I would predict Jax to have more options throughout a game with what he's killing and how he's contributing, be it edge team fighting, be it proper team fighting, be it side laning, and split pushing, and especially in IBS, because Jax is, like, an absolute monster in IBS level play. I would say that Jax is a more flexible champion, as my hypothesis, and that should be one of the dominant things that we're testing throughout the patch, just to see if I'm right. Declo, the patch rundown's going pretty well. I mean, I got stuck on Jax for a while because it's been a long time since I've had to do a patch rundown. And Jax obviously isn't, like, my most experienced champion, right? But that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. Okay, moving on to Aatrox. Aatrox is very, very strong. Aatrox has been very strong for a long time. Aatrox has been strong for virtually everybody, right? The only people who aren't, like, suffering under Aatrox's reign of terror are the IBS players. What's happening to Aatrox? Okay. It is a numbers nerf on damage. It is a numbers nerf on World Ender healing off his E passive. It is a numbers nerf off movement speed. Oof, okay. That's 3 very different areas of power that are getting hit all at once. Let's check the severity. It's only 1% max health damage early, minus 2% max health damage late. Okay, so I don't believe that Deathbringer stance should be, like, noticeably impacted, but we also have to check Aatrox relative to his previous nerfs. Deathbringer stance has lost some healing before. Oh, but that's really it during his reign of terror. He only got nerfed on 1220, and it wasn't enough. And yeah, there was, like, this small amount on 1214, but obviously, like, we're not really considering that. He's still very strong now. So I would imagine that this, since there weren't any damage nerfs coupled with this isn't a very big deal. Losing 9% increased healing, losing up to 20% move speed, practically it's 10, 15, 20. Let's stop to think about what's making Aatrox so unstoppable at, like, all levels right now, right? He right now has, like, a little more spacing forgiveness than I think he probably should, because he's just... he really only needs to hit 1 or 2 of his sweet spots and he survives. So a champion with multiple sources of damage, losing just 1 little bit of damage on one of his sources is going to be virtually not impacted. It's only going to be like a solo Q win rate nerf. Deathbringer stance doesn't really factor in. The healing is quite a lot of his power. The movement speed is giving him more options. It's making him less flank reliant. It's making him easier to play. Oh, I don't have my framework for, like, assessing movement speed values set up, because I was going to set that up when I was talking about, like, Shirelias and Yumu's or something, but... Well, this has given me projects to work on, so that I can more accurately assess this kind of change later. Okay, here's what I'll say then. I would assume that Aatrox's current level at all levels of play is just so overwhelming that there is no way he becomes, like, significantly weaker off this. I think losing, like, a meaningful amount of healing, plus move speed, plus, like, some damage, which is another source of healing, like, is going to matter, but, like, at the end of the day, he's still likely to vamp more than enough to be a menace. I'm going to predict that Aatrox should stay relevant for most levels of play, although maybe he's less dominant as, like, a first pick, like, pick every game sort of champion, you know? Like, that's what I would imagine. Okay, Mundo. Dr. Mundo is doing a lot of damage, and he is very tanky. He's received a set of changes that kind of shifted his identity more towards the late game. And now he's just become a scaling monster, kind of taking things over, and he's, like, realistically the only champion who, like, actually really, really, really likes Heartsteel. So what are they doing to him? Base health minus 40. Okay, so it's like around a 50 effective HP swing, that I typically look for to say, like, yeah, that's actually something we should talk about. It looks like this armor growth might start to factor in there, so let's just start to take a look, right? I have a calculator that I've set up. We're going to actually assess the immediate impact of that change. So, Mundo. Mundo is base 32 plus 4.2 armor. Base 32 stays base 32 plus 4.2 armor per level. It's now going down to 3.7, and his base health is 615, or 653 to 613. So 653 to 613. Whoops. HP per level isn't changing, but we need to check what Mundo's is. It's 103. I think this is configured for Mundo already, right? Yeah, it was. And I forgot to check. Yeah, 3.7. Okay. Okay, what broke? What broke? Tried to find it. Oh, shit. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, so, I did a bad. Let's refresh. We're not saving. I accidentally deleted my D variable. Whoops. Whoops. Okay. 32 to 32, 4.2 to 3.7. It's good to see you, Paradox. Yeah, that was definitely a bit tragic. Sorry, what was it? 4.2 to 3.7. Bear with me here for a moment. Is that everything in here? Yeah, okay. It's now configured for Mundo between 1223B. It is a swing of... Yeah, it's a swing of 50 effective HP at level 1. And at level 11, which is another important breakpoint, that's like 150 difference. At 18, it is like 280 difference, roughly. Okay, so usually when we hit like this 150 range allowed around 11 to 13, like that has to matter. We do have to consider it at least a little bit. It really, really mattered on Jace. Given that we are playing a champion that just stacks Giga HP and Giga Resistances, that's probably not enough to matter for Mundo. Probably minimally power impacting. It's like mostly in the early game, which kind of just further cements his identity as a like 2-item monster who just goes supernova at level 16 eventually. Like, so what actually matters is what's going on here. Blunt Force Trauma. It's minus 5% max health to AD at all ranks, right? Definitely matters early since they didn't change his HP cost. Well, yeah, they didn't change his HP cost, but you have to remember how many HP refunds Mundo has, right? Like, I would imagine this affects him a lot more in the top lane than the jungle. Although Jungle Mundo would be a little bit more susceptible to invade, which matters like Diamond Plus, because Platinum Plus junglers tend not to, or like Platinum and under junglers don't tend to invade solely for like a kill on their opponent. So I would predict this makes literally no difference at IBS, Gold, probably not Platinum. I think Mundo's AD was like so ridiculous that like this also doesn't matter. The armor growth, it change isn't enough. The base health change is compensated for by his itemization. Mundo's probably completely fine, right? I don't think this changes his pick conditions or our perception of his power level. So. And like at worst, you'll see like 2% win rate dip in solo queue or something, but I mean, he was just blatantly overtuned, right? Fiora. What's up with Fiora? Also insane. Fiora has been, if you can play her, just one of the best top laners for several patches now. Like a while. Maximum health damage AD scaling. It is 4.5% max health true damage per 100 AD, down to 4% max health true damage per 100 AD. Physical damage on Q, the ratio is down 5%. Right? Facts. So, again, we then go to my predictors. A DPS champion is almost never majorly impacted by a simple damage nerf, right? So, is Fiora a half-caster? Yes. Is she relying entirely on one DPS spell? No. Is that one DPS spell nerfed in numbers? I mean, like a little bit, right? This is Fiora's losing 2% max health true damage per 100 AD, and then like a 5% bonus AD ratio. Like this practically makes no difference for Fiora at really any level of play. So my predictors say that even if her solo queue win rate is slightly impacted, we don't make any changes in how we're perceiving her. Right. Jace. Yeah, Jace has been conspicuously absent. He is very difficult to play for most players. His laning has been very, very, very vulnerable. Let's go back and let's remember the nerf that actually got rid of Jace at the top level, right? Where is he? There he is. And this buff is like virtually nothing. Okay. Well, he actually did get a 12-16 buff that I forgot about. Like a very small Thundering Blow, percent max health change. To the skies. Yeah, just hammer changes. It was really... Was it this one? This was a big one, and it was coupled with something else. There was something about his speed. There was something about his speed at some point. Was it really this long ago? It was 11-18? Are you serious? Okay, so it was the 11-18 move speed changes, plus, like, this noticeable... Like, look at this. Look at this armor reduction. And how... Like, Jace got significantly squishier, significantly easier to punish. His damage didn't go down, but it was just, like, way, 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 way too easy to kill Jace. Right. What's he getting now? You can't be serious, right? So Jace's survivability issues aren't helped at all. He's just becoming more volatile because the damage that they're buffing is actually hammer Q. I thought at some point in the... I thought they were teasing like a ranged Q buff at one point. Okay. So at rank 5 Q, it is plus 30 damage. And, like, okay, to be fair to Jace, let's find out, like, how many ticks is this? 4 ticks? It's 4 ticks. Okay. So Jace is gaining, like, assuming everything goes perfectly right, plus 70 base damage in one combo, and not factoring in his base attack damage, which, I mean, truthfully only affects, like, I mean, like, these changes are usually very, very, very low impact. Unless you're a champion that just, like, unusually synergizes with tiny amounts of AD, like Graves. I don't think Jace is usually getting his entire lightning field off. This is usually not a component of, like, his late-game burst combos, and it's, like, usually he's trying to take short trades, where he's just, like, jumping in, get it, like... If he's actually taking a hammer trade in lane, he's not sitting there and proccing his entire lightning field. Like, this is a wave clear buff. That's what this is. But, like, does Jace need a wave clear buff? I actually then wonder if, like... No, it probably doesn't matter, because you're not just, like, walking into the wave as Jace with your lightning field active while contested, so... Obviously, any, like, just damage Jace changes do not affect IBS. They do not affect goals. They should not affect plat, even, probably. Like, Jace is not... maybe they affect plat a little bit, but Jace is not a low elo champion. And I would imagine that this doesn't change his power significantly. Cassante. Okay. Casante's gross, but Casante's really cool, right? Casante is just a little overtuned in how much damage he's dealing. He should be able to do some damage when he goes all out, but like his tank form, I said in day one Casante, it's doing a reasonable amount of damage, like, and then as people got better at playing the champion, they unlocked so much potential. What are they doing to Casante? His base movement speed is down by 5. Okay, I'm not very good at predicting the impact of those ones, but like usually that means something. He is a champion with mobility, so probably fine. Minus 5 damage on passive, so that's the kind of numbers change where in isolation wouldn't change anything. Like nothing significant. Although, actually, now that I look at this, I have to remember the multiplicative interactions with his all-out. So let's just remind myself what exactly that looks like. It would be up here. Both the attacks damage and the marks damage are increased by 35% plus 20%. Okay, so, I mean, it's like... I mean, assuming he has, like, no resistances, which he obviously doesn't. I mean, oh my god, he's losing, like, virtually nothing. It's like... Yeah, he's losing, like, 2 damage per mark before factoring in resistances, but even that can't make a major difference, so... Low impact change. Casante will be fine with this one, most likely. This is a good change. Pathmaker was doing way too much damage, but how much did they nerf it by? They nerfed the tank one by 2.25% max health. They nerfed the all-out one by 1.25% max health. Okay, that's a little bit scary because, like, the all-out one, I think, was the... Oh, hang on. No, I'm stupid. Hang on. Whoops. That's minimum and maximum. Duh. Can't read. So let's just remind myself how this interacts. It deals bonus physical damage. Okay, so something got funky in my understanding of this ability where I thought the percent max health damage was, like, actually increasing when he went all out, and that was one of the major reasons that this ability was just nuking you for fun. And I really think Pathmaker is one of the worst contributing factors to Casante, just being able to press all out on a full health target and run them down and kill them, like, instantly. Jeez, I really don't think that 1.25% max health, like... makes a big difference on Pathmaker. Okay, I don't think we perceive Casante any differently after this patch. I don't think his pick conditions change. I don't think his, like, overall power level changes. It really looks like a solo queue win rate nerf. Okay. Lysandra. Okay, we have a health growth change, so we have to plug her into the calculator to see how much this matters. We have a slow change. I didn't make any CC predictors. Whoops. And we have a Ring of Frost cooldown change. Okay, let's start with the calculator. Let's start with the durability. Okay, Lysandra, she has 620 plus 104. 620, 620. We're just gonna stick with her armor for right now. 22, 4.9. No, we should do magic resist, given that she's a mid laner. And is more likely to encounter this. 30 plus 1.3. And the actual change is 104 to 110 health growth. Which probably doesn't make a very significant impact, right? So at level 11, it is... Hold on, mental math, brain fart, like, whatever. It's plus, like, 75. Plus 75 HP at level 11. It's plus, 150? Yeah. Like, around 150 at 18, like, endgame. So with 75 HP, like, that big a deal, well, 50 is the area where we start to say, like, maybe I should, like, increase my criteria a little bit if 50 is what we're considering, like, super significant. No, but it is for early game, for early game. It is for early game, but I'm missing a predictor for mid game, so I should keep that in mind. This makes no difference in lane phase whatsoever, and by the mid game, she's, like, plus 75 HP, which, like, isn't even your typical health item. So this is probably a very low impact change for Lissandra overall until, like, the super late game, but even then, like, yeah. Slow going up, I can't assess very accurately. Ring of Frost, is Lissandra casting her Ring of Frost off cooldown? Does this put it at, like, a new cooldown class or anything? Which is also gosh, you know, like, I did so much work on my predictors, and then the patch notes come out, and it's like, oh, I haven't done this one. Oh, I haven't done this one. But it's like, you know, we knew there would be growing pains. We knew there would be growing pains. It is just like a big, or it's supposed to be a big utility boost to Lissandra. Ring of Frost off cooldown. Most fights where I visualize Lissandra, she's getting, like, one Ring of Frost off. She's getting her engage off. I guess there's, like, later, like, another follow-up like, for cleanup. Ring of Frost and Glacial Path are now even more desynced, so it's like she still might be gated by Glacial Path, like, for some cleanup scenarios. I mean, I hate just saying this, but, like, doing my study over December has really opened my eyes to how many changes in this game, like, make virtually no difference to most players. And, like, I've kind of got to believe that this is small, except maybe in the wave clear department. Okay, assuming that I'm right and that Lissandra finds very, very few circumstances in which she's casting Ring of Frost off cooldown, I don't think this is very significant. I do think, like, a slow boost is nice at late ranks, right? Like, it's starting to approach 40. Like, I think this is nice, but given that it's, like, 75 HP at mid-game, it's, like, 2 seconds off an ability that probably isn't being spent off cooldown, we're really only looking at the value of this slow, and so I don't think that meaningfully changes Lissandra's power level. It's not, like, catapulting her up into dominance, or we're not, like, suddenly clamoring to draft Lissandra, who is, like, a reasonably fine champion and coordinated player. Like, they say she's underperforming and lacking excitement and stuff, but, like, there's a lot of ways you can draft her as just a solid utility champion who I suppose doesn't really thrive as much in certain lanes. Yeah, okay, I'll just, like, I'll leave that point where it is. So. Remus is friggin' nuts, in Season 13 so far. His clear still isn't, like, super fast, but, like, he's definitely thriving in, like, a slightly slower paced jungle, and he is just the best champion at IBS gold, like, levels. He's so ridiculous. So what are they doing to him? He found a new friend by Jackshow. Current synergy between Remus and Jackshow is being adjusted so the two interact more cleanly, but this should be roughly neutral. Okay, let's... Flat armor is going down to 25. Percent armor, early game, is going down. Rammus loses 3 AD. Rammus loses 20 base HP. This is irrelevant. Remember, it doesn't hit, like, our early game 50 threshold that we care about. This is a potential clear speed nerf. The only champions that the only champions that, like, meaningfully get affected by base AD changes are junglers, but clear speed is not a real factor in a champion's performance, like, under Diamond. To an extent, kind of in Platinum, but, like, our current theory on the Platinum level of play is that opportunities aren't really made unless you're like a supersonic clearing jungler. So should be no meaningful change for most players on these. This is a hard thing to math out. I hate dealing with Rammus W changes, I'm not going to lie. Like, trying to predict the impact of Rammus W changes, like, when his math is so weird and you have to kind of do it on the fly, like... Flat resistance granted by Rammus's W. Okay, so this was like a point of ignorance for me where I just didn't know that it wasn't already doing that. Let's look at current state. Okay, yeah, Rammus really, really lives or dies by how much damage he's putting out with W. Like, as a pure initiator, I would argue that other champions just do his job better if he's not, like, a nuisance with double Thornmail. Was this really not factoring in as a total armor ratio? What? That doesn't make any sense. This wasn't... Okay, so this apparently wasn't factoring in. It would apply this first... and then this. So I wasn't aware. Okay, Rammus. If you are on 25 flat armor from this ability, and you're now... I multiply that by 1.4, so that's 40%. He now has 35 armor from this skill alone, which is roughly the same. Roughly the same. At high levels, that's... It's higher, technically, but, like, he's gaining less from his actual items. Is this meaningfully enough of a power down? Well, are they also nerfing Jack-Show down here? Yeah, they are. Okay, let's put a pin in Rammus. Let's come back to him and assess him again once we've been through the items, okay? Shaco. They're trying to buff 80 Shaco. So, it's funny. Like, I kind of got confirmation that Shaco is not in the best spot because every bit of Platinum play that I've studied says Shaco should be a really dominant champion at that particular level of play. And he's just not. He's just not for some reason. So, like, that kind of implies 80 Shaco being very weak. What's happening to his Q? Mana cost down on a jungler. Meh. Backstab, critical strike, bonus damage up to 40%. Okay. Okay, that one actually can get out of hand pretty quickly. Like a percent damage increase. It's just one auto attack, but... Magic damage is plus 5% bonus AD. Magic damage to targets below 30% health. Below 30% health of maximum health. Yeah, cool wording. 112 plus 5... 112.5 bonus AD to 120% bonus AD. Like W2 shift. Okay. A lot of typos in the Shaco section, but... Okay. Burst champions are more impacted by small damage number changes than DPS champions. And Shaco is a burst champion. Kind of. Like, physical damage Shaco, he is supposed to just appear, one-shot you. He still needs to auto-attack you down, like, a little bit, but, like, he is still a burst champion. So that implies this is... I mean, it is a 5% VAD increase on one spell. And, like, against a durable opponent, Shaco can maybe get, like, 2 rotations off of that, but, like, I would not say that is, like, hugely significant. Where's Shaco? I hate trying to find champions on the sides. The attack will critically strike for 30% bonus physical damage. This is... Okay, sorry. I'm, like, reading the ability improperly. When Shaco comes out, he will deal this. But the backstab bonus is, like, actually a crit. The attack will crit. That's how this reads, right? For significantly more than a normal crit, right? Crits are, like, 125% right now. This is 140% after the patch. Cooldown on 2 Shiv is 8 seconds. execute damage up by less than 10%. It's 7.5%. Is this another nothing change? Like, oh, okay. So let me contextualize what I'm calling a nothing change too. Like, when I say this change should have like no significant impact, it's not that it's not actually changing the damage dealt. It's just not. I don't think it's meaningfully changing like what you can go for or why you would pick the champion. Low levels of play do not care about any of this. Like. IBS Gold doesn't care about any of this, right? Platinum starts to care. Diamond starts to care. Masters does care. Burst champ. Okay, I think this is probably one to investigate later. Burst champions are more impacted by damage changes. So this is more likely than the changes above to actually have an impact on Shaco's power level. And if it does have an impact on Shaco's power level, then he's most impacted in Platinum, which is like the level of play that he terrorizes best. According to what I've studied so far. For right now, I cannot confidently say that this will make a significant difference, but like, this change right here is just like nagging at the back of my mind. It's like, that kind of looks like something. So this is one to test later. This is one that we should actually, we'll put an asterisk on this. We'll test it throughout 13.1. And I will have some people check it out, and maybe I'll be able to check it out myself. So. Scion. They undershot the goals, partially due to the Q buff. Well, I mean, it did make Scion reasonably more playable, right? It unbound him from Corrupting Potion. It unlocked more of his mana bar. It does matter. Now he's getting plus 40 HP. Now he's getting plus 20 damage, Decimating Smash, all ranks. Okay, I mean, because Scion's weakest point is like his early laning, I think we should consider this relevant. Scion, when he makes it to the mid game as a tank, is quite good. AD Scion, if you know how to play it, is fine, right? But if this bolsters his laning, you know, like maybe Scion isn't it? I mean, he's still susceptible to counterpick. He still has a very binary, like, key interaction. If you have the means to outplay and play around his Q, and you have like high mobility like that, Scion will struggle against you a lot. So I mean, I haven't actually like formalized what his like matchup class is. I think or his priority class. I think he's probably a response class champion, like, or maybe he's a counter develop or something. Okay, so like that's kind of the thing. I would assume that this actually makes a difference because it actually does boost his survivability and his wave clear in his weakest part of lane, and the previous buffs that he received were already really good for that. And now it just like whether he is a more pickable champion just comes down to how extreme his matchups are. That's a bit of a hole in my knowledge, right? So he will become more pickable unless he is still extremely limited by matchups with this buff plus the last one. That's what I think. Because he does contribute high value in the mid game. Twisted Fate. It's been a long time since we last buffed TF, and even then he hasn't been lucky enough to be drawn in solo queue or pro play. We're giving him a bit more freedom to let his cards fly wildly, putting a bit more oomph behind his red and blue cards. So, Twisted Fate is a dangerous, dangerous champion, right? When Twisted Fate is strong, he has one of the most extreme tempo cheats in the game. Like, he warps the map so much when he's in the game. Like, it is literally a cheat code. It is such obscenely powerful output, and it is only gated by his wave clear. When Twisted Fate's wave clear is poor, he is heavily gated, he loses his cheat, he is not strong. So what do? It is a 1 second difference on wild cards at max rank. Blue card magic damage, the blue. That's funny. Plus 25? Yeah, plus 25% ratio on blue card. Red card is plus 10%. Okay. I have a friend who is a Twisted Fate player. He loves Twisted Fate. He tries to make Twisted Fate work all the time, even when Twisted Fate is weak. He has not been a fan of Everfrost Rapid Fire Cannon for the sake of solo queue. He thinks in solo queue it's not good. It's obviously the best way to play Twisted Fate in coordinated play, just lean into a strength as a utility champion, but in solo queue he really prefers to like actually itemize for some damage and something. So in that sense, solo queue Twisted Fate should be quite a bit stronger like in lane, like if you're building like that, right? I am interested if with DMAT plus just Everfrost, if this red card ratio actually makes a difference on the core, like Everfrost, Lucidity Boot, Rapid Fire builds. Plus 5 seconds, like it might speed up his wave clear enough for him to find some stuff. These are the kinds of changes that would imply Twisted Fate becomes quite a lot stronger and quite a lot more pickable. I don't think he is that big in IBS. I don't think he's that important in, like, I mean, okay, I shouldn't be speaking for gold before I've had the time to, like, really assess how that level works, but, I would, this is on our watch list. I will not immediately say that Twisted Fate is good because it hinges on whether this actually hits a wave clear breakpoint, and I think he was close. I think Twisted Fate was really close to great wave clear breakpoints after his last set of changes. So if this does hit those breakpoints, Twisted Fate is much, 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 much better in, like, Platinum, Diamond, Gold. Or Platinum, Diamond plus, like. Xayah. Xayah is kind of weak. Okay, so I was a Xayah defender for a really, really long time. I'm like, guys, Xayah actually just has her niche. You pick her in the right niche, she's good. And then I started to realize it's like, she's kind of competing with Aphelios and Draven in that same niche for, like, anti-dive. And I also finally concluded it's like, okay, yeah, if you have an 80 carry that's dealing, like, predominantly auto-attack damage, like, maybe it's a little weaker. It's, like, part of why Zeri was weak, despite technically having it all in her kit before she got her last buffs. That being said, like, don't forget how much damage Xayah E is doing. Like, she is chunking. She is really good against, like, noticeably squishy, very committal divers, right? And now she's just doing more damage. Let's actually open my predictors. If a pure auto attacker receives a nerf or buff to a base attack speed or attack speed ratio, it is highly likely to behave as my half-caster example, which is if a half-caster relies entirely on one single DPS spell, which is nerfed in numbers, their solo queue, IBS, and gold win rate will drop, but their diamond plus competitive performance may remain stable. Whether it's stable or not depends on if they have access to a stable, scaling-oriented game plan, whether they consistently play with their teammates, whether, like, the change affects clear speed. So, like, in that sense, Xayah pick conditions don't change. If I'm sleeping on her E damage a little bit, like, you know, maybe Xayah's, like, reasonably good. Also, actually, this is important. Don't forget that I just mentioned that Xayah's core competitors are, like, Aphelios and Draven. Those are not champions that everyone can play. So, Xayah actually probably should be in the pool of a lot of, like, gold 80 carries, platinum 80 carries. But at those levels of play, like, compositional matchups don't matter too much, and she is a very controlled champion. Okay, we're probably going to see a small win rate spike in Diamond, but, like, meh. Probably low impact. Yumi! Minus 50 damage on Q. Okay, we now have to ask the question, does even this keep Yumi alive? Yumi is an atrocious solo queue champion right now, but God, she's broken. She is so broken. And part of what makes her so broken is that she just, like, guys, the strength, her output is more than just this, right? Like, +1 summoner spell in every lane. You always have summoner spell advantage playing Yumi. Or you have summoner spell neutrality plus the ability to take ghost. Like, she's not that weak a laner. She is stagnating a lot of lanes. But, you know, typically Yumi's Q and Yumi's E are strong at different times. The last set of Yumi changes did virtually nothing, don't forget, but, like, let's just remember what state her E is in right now, shall we? It is healing for 150 at max rank. And the last nerf it received was... Oh, it was a cooldown change. That's right. It's now a 10-second cooldown. With significantly less movement speed. The health ratio is changed. Or unchanged. The health ratio is unchanged. Okay, so it's just a full revert of the... It's a partial revert of this hotfix. That's what it is. And this hotfix made Yumi's... I mean, before this hotfix came through, Yumi's solo queue win rate was in the dumpster. So I would imagine that actually... Because IBS correlates very strongly to solo queue performance too. I think Yumi is probably just actually a bad champion at the lowest levels of amateur play. Especially given how reliant she is on teammates, right? So, yeah, don't pick Yumi in very low levels of play right now, then. This is untouched. My mage item study says that Yumi should probably be building Liandry's because there's, like, one support in the game who actually likes Ludens, and his name is Zareth. Yumi is a... Oh... We're forgetting a critical detail. Yumi is a poke champion, and poke champions are heavily, heavily, heavily impacted by small damage changes. Because usually it doesn't matter, it's not creating more windows, but for poke champs, every point counts, right? You're not necessarily trying to kill somebody. Okay, if we are lucky, the evil is defeated for the short term. I don't have full faith that this removes Yumi from play at the top level. It is a lot of damage being removed. Like, don't get me wrong, it is a lot of damage being removed. Her output is weaker. This should impact her quite a bit, given that she's a poke champion. But before I've ruled her out entirely, we should just kind of reassess some, like, W-max stuff that was popping up. We should just kind of check to see if Liandry's plus Q-max is still, like, fine overall. This champion was so blatantly broken that even this nerf probably keeps her in an okay spot. But I would assume that we actually do get to stop worrying about Yumi every game. Okay, Zeri, who is the fun champion who fits into everything. There's literally not a single composition that Zeri doesn't like to play with. She's succeeded in shifting to a new and healthier play pattern, strong in high brackets. Oh yeah, she has. She always is. 80 growth, minus 0.2. Total base physical damage, minus 4. This is a very small, it's a very marginal DPS nerf. So again, we check the conditions. Are you relying entirely on this? Yep, this is your auto attack. So... It's not a... Wait, hang on. Hold on. Did I miss something with Xayah? Is that a ratio change? Oh my god, that's a ratio change. Ooh. Oh, wait a minute. Guys, ratio changes are like the biggest change that an auto attacker can receive. That's not just base attack speed. Like, that's the ratio too. I mean, it's not as drastic a change as Senna's, like the plus 0.1. Okay, but we actually do have to keep our eye on Xayah then. That actually is, like, a potentially meaningful DPS increase, and Xayah's DPS in her best spots was already fine. So. Okay, but now that we've gotten undistracted by that one, Zeri is a pure auto attacker. We consider her one because her Q is basically an auto attack. How much damage is she losing? She is basically losing 4 base AD, like, minus 5 base AD. Okay, yeah, who cares? This is not... This is not changing pick conditions. This is not changing overall power level. This is not changing lane strength dramatically. It's not changing lane strength at all. Like, no, she's fine. She's fine. She's still barely a champion before one item, which is fine. We want Zeri to have those windows of weakness. But I promise this will not meaningfully impact her output in team fights. So... Alright, Axiom Arc. We're gonna now start talking about items. So actually, just a recap. Do you want to recap before we start talking about items? Jax will need some investigation to see if he becomes a lot more flexible. Aatrox, he should still be very playable, although I do think all three of these together hit him a bit. Like, he should still be good. Mundo, we expect minimal impact. Fiora, minimal impact. Jace, minimal impact. Cassante, very, very minor impact. Lysandra, probably small impact. Rammus, we're still waiting to read the items. Shaco is on our watch list. We're going to see how much this is impacting him, because I would imagine this matters, but I'm not convinced it does. Sion is noticeably better with this buff plus his last buff, if his matchups allow him to be noticeably better. Twisted Fate, I am afraid. I think this actually probably passes a wave clear breakpoint. If it does, he's much better. If it doesn't, we need to test. Then this is not changing his power. Xayah, with an attack speed ratio increase, is dealing meaningfully higher DPS as the game goes on. And we actually should, especially in levels of play where players don't have access to Aphelios and Draven, really be considering her in her best spots. Yuumi, I think the evil is defeated because poke champions are heavily impacted by numbers changes. But she was so broken that she still probably sees play and still probably has good spots. We just need to check her out, test with Leandries. Zeri, minimal impact. Axiom Arc is a terrible, terrible, terrible item. Now, the cool thing about it is, I was talking to some people on my Discord server about this item, and this is actually one of the changes that I proposed. Just bumping Axiom Arc to Yumu's level lethality. Because Axiom is just a stat stick. What it does, like, it has the most haste of any lethality item. It had piss poor lethality for its cost point, and its AD was nothing to, like, write home about compared to its competitors, right? And then the core reason you would technically want this is for the ult refresh to, like, continually make picks and stuff. Like, on paper, Nocturne, but even Nocturne should be building attack speed and health rather than lethality, so it's like, ugh. This is a real buff to Axiom Arc. It does mean that it has 11 flat pen, in its worst case. It's like 11.2 flat pen in worst case or something, right? And yeah, Perma Nocturne R wasn't fun. It really wasn't. And this thing is just like, what's it doing exactly right now? Like, genuinely bottom 5 item in the game before this change. Scoring a takedown against an enemy champion that refunds 20% of your ultimate ability's total cooldown. And this was affected by CDR, right? Oh, but before it wasn't. It was like total before CDR, right? That's why it was so broken? Yeah, it was bugged. So if assassins are supposed to use their cooldowns to get in and get out, and you want to see this item just removes it. But, like, removes the gate? I mean, it's definitely not that extreme. It's really not that extreme. It makes it potentially possible. I mean, really, it's the haste that you like. It's like, does your assassin actually like playing out a team fight with higher haste? Like, is this a stat stick to rival Yumu's? Is this actually creating pick opportunities for you? Is Talon E affected by the haste? Actually, that's a question to ask. On-terrain cooldown is affected by haste. Okay. Interesting. So, now we need to compare it to its other options too. Like, does this create anything for anybody? Like, because what are we comparing it to? We're comparing it to Yumu's, we're comparing it to Cyrilda's, we're comparing it to Black Cleaver on some champions, we're comparing it to Edge of Night. I would say it's a Zed item, if not for his energy gating. Because, like, Zed actually would love to have multiple rotations throughout a fight. He could play it out. Who would benefit the most from this? Who would benefit the most from this? I'm not actually convinced that this alone makes Axiom, like, really good. I'm just saying it's probably now a competitive stat stick to Yumu's if we can find a champion who, like, gains pick potential from greater ultimate access or gains combat value through the raw A haste, right? And, like, maybe Kha'Zix, unironically. Kiana could meaningfully get teamfight value out of this. just greater access to her Q Shroud, now that it's, like, not the worst lethality in the universe. Rengar could, if Giga Snowballing at low levels of play, like, gain access to more picks. So, like, my expectation is, because it's a stat stick item, it's still very niche. There's just, like, it probably is, like, that Kiana case. Like, Kiana case. Oh, Pike. Pike. It's a Pike item. Pike loves haste. Pike loves haste. No, that's actually, like, probably the best user of this item. Yeah, that's a Bard item right there. Yeah, so I would imagine that, like, only really Pike and maybe Kiana Kha'Zix are going to start, like, looking at this, and maybe Talon's going to start looking at this, but, like, Talon's not gaining a lot of value out of playing out a fight with this. Like, he's mostly just, he doesn't really need Yumu's if he's hopping around with extra haste on his walls and stuff, so we'll take a look. It probably doesn't have, like, a ton of users. It's probably still not, like, an amazing item, but I think I would actually start to consider this a real option. We would check things out. Horizon Focus. Okay, so this is really, really, really convenient for me. This is a super convenient change for me. Why? Because when I did my study on Shadowflame versus Horizon Focus, I didn't factor in their AP. Now I don't have to. I simply do not have to factor in their AP. And so let's actually, here, we'll save it now. We'll go get my Shadowflame versus Horizon Focus. That's like a raw damage test, right? And what we found is that Horizon Focus was really good if you were, like, indiscriminately hitting anybody. If you were, like, expecting to poke high HP frontliners, Horizon Focus would outperform. Other than that, it's always Shadowflame. Because, like, this situation where is it? Like, who's the impossible target here? It's like, is this the guy that, I just need to remember what my, yeah, this is best case Shadowflame. This target's impossible. This target is straight up impossible up here. So, like, and where's worst case Shadow? What am I doing? It's just intersections of... I'm not reading my own graph properly. Why am I not reading my own graph properly? But yeah, you can see this average case Shadowflame, the intersect between average case Shadowflame and Horizon Focus is like 65 MR, and then Horizon Focus starts to deal more, and then you can see best case Shadowflame, like, it takes all the way until 120 MR for Horizon Focus to start doing more damage. That's how we read the graph. Like, oh, yeah, because these are just the intersection points between, like, worst case, middle, average case, and best case Shadowflame. So now this graph is just accurate, because there's no difference in AP to compare between these items, which is awesome. I don't have to do that extra math. Which basically means, very, very long-winded and pointless way of saying, Horizon Focus is only better against high HP frontliners if you're hitting those. If you do not care who you're poking, you're just firing spells at anybody, and you are not expecting to just be nuking people down with, like, optimal Shadowflame value, that's the situation where Horizon Focus would outperform. Other than that, you don't build this item still. Jack Show, it is getting nerfed. Plus 100 cost. We are going from a total resistance to a bonus resistance increase. It is plus 20% rather than 15, but it is not affecting your base resistances. Okay, so Jack Show is not going to be as good on bruiser users. It is not going to be as big a durability stick as it used to be. It's not going to be your one-stop shop. And it already kind of got a nerf that was trying to make it not a one-stop shop, because it was 3 per second originally, and now it's more expensive again. 3% max health goes down to 80 plus 7% bonus health. That's, I assume, your own bonus health, so it says, yeah, please make this a tank item, please. Voidborn Resilience's drain damage will no longer affect minions and monsters. I didn't know it did. Okay, so immediately what I'm thinking when I read this is that actually the generic tank should just go into Radiant Virtue. I think Radiant Virtue has been slept on over the course of this preseason, and it's now gaining popularity. But Radiant Virtue on actual tank users is just absolutely insane. I think we are now reaching the point where our initial predictions for the preseason can be true. Because we initially predicted that Jack-Show would be kind of underwhelming, and that Radiant Virtue would be like God mode. But Jack-Show was way overtuned, and we didn't know, right? I'm curious to see how this performs on, like, Diana and Lilia and, like, those types of champions. Yone should be unaffected because if he has to build tank, then he still has access to, like, the Iceborne Gauntlet version. You're looking into Shen. Radiant Redemption. Ooh! That's kind of saucy. Your first tick of Radiant is wasted, but I don't think we really care. That's lovely. I like that. So yeah, I think on actual tank users, we're definitely not Jack-Show fans right now. Even though they're trying to make this more appealing for tanks, I think just Radiant outperforms. So it depends on how the Bruiser users feel about this. And that's going to require a practical test. Because, like, if this by numbers, you can tell the direction is that they really don't want this to work on champions like Lilia. But things have been shifted around enough that I can't, like, 100% predict, and we're going to have to check it out. Because, like, I'm leaning towards bad. But I am not ready to make that claim definitively without seeing how it performs. How do we feel about Iceborne relatively? I mean, it's definitely niche, or has been for a long time. I was about to bring up the Cassante example until I remembered, oh yeah, Jack-Show, Cassante, like, Jack-Show just has ridiculous interactions with Cassante, so he's probably sticking, like, I'm wondering if there's more opportunities for it, but, like, okay. IBG is, I think, actually quite good on champions with high base damages. It's just hard to find a window where it's, like, 100% best. Cassante has found some windows where he likes it. I believe Poppy has found some windows where she likes it. I mean, like, Poppy is, like, the definitive IBG style champion. So I feel fine about it if you can find a champion-specific reason to build it. And, like, low-key, its slow is just gargantuan. Like, its slow is very, very powerful, but it's just kind of like, do you have enough damage to back up what's happening? Are you playing in a context where that slow matters, right? So now that we know what's happening to Rammus, now that we know what's happening to Jack-Show, let's actually check Rammus out again, right? Rammus has lost some flat armor. He still has this percent armor increase. It's still interacting with Jack-Show. Rammus is gaining more bonus resistances at max stacks, like percent bonus resistances. It's just, yeah, you know what? I think Rammus as a whole is still probably doing great in most levels of play. Because again, the levels where he's really dominating, this doesn't matter. We mathed this out so we know it's actually mostly neutral. Because you should be trying to max this ASAP. There's just going to be, like, a period where he's weaker. And I would predict that, like, the way Jack-Show has changed plus the way Rammus has changed isn't going to be, like, absolutely kneecapping, right? I've seen it a little bit, but it's definitely still an underexplored strategy. And, like, right now, only the Baus is playing it, and we know his play style is kind of extreme, and teams have to learn to play around that if they want to incorporate it, plus you have to get good at that. Like it's a difficult play style to execute on. So, Rod of Ages. Oh my god, that's a lot. Okay. Yes, Rod of Ages is weak. I have found one champion that actually, like, consistently likes Rod of Ages. It's actually Gwen. It's actually Gwen. I'm like, I've been doing some studying, and I genuinely think Gwen just generally prefers Roa to Riftmaker. Like, everyone else, virtually everybody else, like, probably has better options right now, like, especially since Roa is a mythic. And it's like, even Aurelion Sol, who's, like, perfect candidate, you kind of want to build Rylai's first, and it feels awkward. So, what are they doing? Plus 100 HP. the proc requirement is now every 200 healing or mana restoration to get some movement speed. The movement speed is up. The movement speed duration is up. The movement speed decay is slower. Eternity is now... Okay, you're gaining a little less, but you're gaining more health. They're buffing Eternity! Okay, just baseline Crack Rock, the Catalyst of Eons. Baseline Catalyst is probably just, like, it's already good. It's already good to just sit on the Catalyst on some champions and not build it into anything. But, like, on maximum heal... Okay, like... I know in the grand scheme of things, this is probably not, like, that big, but, like, it's so appealing on mana spenders. It is so appealing. Taric? Oh! Taric with Catalyst, guys. You just build... you just build the Catalyst. You can do whatever you want. Eternity's movement speed proc now, okay? Okay, so, I mean, Rod of Ages has gotten better at doing what it does, which is being a durability stat stick, and it still scales slowly, and, like, what it does is better if you have damage to back it up on your core users. And again, this should be a Rise item, but I think he's been sticking to Everfrost right now. Like, he's definitely not a Leandry's champ, which implies that Roa is good on him. Cassiopeia probably still prefers to have the damage, but... I don't know. I mean, we should probably just start to reassess. Like, hey, is Rise any better? Is Taric any better? Is Gwen any better? Like, what's going on here? Are we actually solving some stickiness issues here? Okay. People are kind of too focused on his current full damage in jungle. I think he does probably need the full damage to thrive on jungle income and, like, influence right now. I would imagine that Roa Silas feels reasonably nice in mid lane. I would not be surprised to hear that. I thought of it at first. I thought of it, like, when Roa got announced to be coming back to the game. But I think I kind of just settled on Everfrost being too important for his team fighting overall. And then the problem is, like, do you really want your Silas taking forever to come online, right? I don't doubt that it probably feels nice and that you can get away with it. I'm just not confident in saying that it's, like, great yet. Oh, yeah, and then we also have to look at some Seraph's changes. So, I'll leave Rod of Ages as saying its actual core users and the champions who can get away with running it should probably look at it again, like, just for a moment, because, like, it is doing better at what it's supposed to do. Just remember that what it's supposed to do can leave you severely lacking on damage if you're building on the wrong type of champion, right? It is a noticeably niche item nowadays. And Archangels now going up to 3,000 gold, AP plus 20, haste plus 10. Awe now grants AP equal to 1% bonus mana. Empyrean is gone, which is the weird healing thing that it had, but it now has its proper shield back, and it's a lifeline passive. AP equal to 2.5% bonus mana. Mwah! Seraphs is saved! Okay, so many core users of Seraphs just hated building this thing. Like, all of the battle mages didn't care about A-haste. Like, Rise wasn't getting any value out of A-haste. Cassiopeia wasn't gaining a ton of value off, like, A-haste. Cassiopeia, like, would prefer to have the raw damage to back up what she's doing, right? So all of the champions that aren't hard bound to tier but used to like Seraphs can actually start considering this again. Swain with a lifeline passive, yeah. Exactly. But you don't need AP to amplify what this is doing. Grants AP equal to % bonus mana. So, like, you would probably have to opt into Leandry's if you were doing that. Like, you wouldn't... I would not pair this with, like, a Mandate or a Moonstone or, like, a Jackshow or, like, whatever infinite number of Swain Mythics that he has. Like, you should probably you would build a Lost Chapter item with this. Or, I mean, how much mana is Rod of Ages giving compared to, like... Rod of Ages is giving 400 mana compared to 600 on the other. Okay, so it's like, oh my god, even the Rod of Ages Seraphs users can't catch a break. So yeah, Oriana probably starts to look at this again. Swain probably starts to look at this again. We can actually go back to our list of champions one more time and just like remind ourselves who liked to build this in the past. Xerath actually loves this now. Xerath really likes this now. In a situation, you never have to build crown on Xerath. Let's go. Oh my god. Hang on. Okay, this is weird. Kassadin is buffed again. Yeah, so Kassadin's just going sicko mode. That's a really good call out. Okay, so I've had this theory about a pseudo tank Fizz for a really long time, and I've been trying to find a way to make it work. It's like, if on paper a build existed where you could go like Cosmic Drive into Zonya's, into like, I don't know, I guess now this new Archangel's Lifeline or something, then you could become like Maiev from Heroes of the Storm and just like basically act as a tank, jump in, have like Giga E uptime. Like, I'm curious to see if something can contribute to that, but I doubt something will come of that, right? What other mages like can start considering this? Cassiopeia's very happy. Anivia's very happy because she didn't care about the haste. Oh my god, there's so many champions. Talia might actually find some value out of this again. I have to do the math on this, and I have to just check out what it's contributing against other conventional like mage items, because like Seraphs is now rejoining standard mage itemization. It is 100% going back into standard as a second item option for a lot of mana using mages. I just need to math out where exactly it fits in. We're just excited to see. We're excited to play with our new toy again, right? The only thing we now have to be concerned about is what happens to Seraphine, who is like the only champion who actually liked that haste. That's something to look at. I guess Sona too, you could argue. Zillion, if he was building that, actually liked the haste over the AP. So there's like a small subset of utility champions who liked the old Seraphs that we'll have to watch, but like, I mean, Seraphine can find ways to overcome some mana issues. She's not hard bound to tier. Sona, I never liked building this on, to be honest. Stay on tier and build Cosmic? Yeah, that's probably a good option too. Oh, Sona's actually happier with it with Lifeline now. Never mind. Everybody likes the shield again. I love to see this. I'd love to see this. Winter's Approach, which has fallen off a lot because the tier trough is big. So that's actually something we should talk about with Seraphs as well. Building a tier sucks. It feels awful. It's just now the payoff is worth it for mages. So Winter's Approach really fell off over time because it was just an HP item and it required you to build a tier and weaken your lane phase. And it was really nice to have like high shield uptime like that, but now we have Randuin's in a good state. Now we have like Sunfire as an HP item, which is fine. Oh, speaking of, I did my tests on Sunfire from the previous patch rundown. And I have to say that I was wrong about just sitting on Bombies for jungle. It didn't make a major difference when I tested it. But I haven't gotten around to testing it for lane, right? Rise, and to an extent Kassadin too. But like there were definitely some tanks who actually did like this. Like I used to like it on Taric before his mana costs got reduced. It is now increased. Okay. I said all of that and then I read what the changes are and it's like kind of nice for some supports, I guess. But plus 50 is not going to get anyone buying this item more than before. We have some rune stuff. We have Legend Tenacity. The Tenacity is going down, so the maximum Tenacity is down 10%. Bard item again. Everything's a Bard item. True. Maximum Tenacity at full stacks, down 10%. I mean, like, okay, its competitors are Alacrity and Bloodline. Are any champions going to opt into Alacrity over Tenacity now because of this? No, it doesn't change any pick conditions. Okay. So we don't really have to factor this in too much, right? Irelia could. I get, but like, Well, the only champions who are making the decision now are the champions who were already making the decision, right? It's not like now that Tenacity is weaker, you start making the decision. Irelia already was, I imagine, making that decision. Yeah. I mean, hopefully not. I like building Lucidity Boots on every champion in the game, but... Or swiftness boots. Okay, we've got some, like, little death time changes for ARAM, some lifesteal effectiveness for ARAM, specific champion changes, which I'm not going to read. Okay, some ranked stuff, which doesn't matter for competitive play at all, right? Doesn't matter for our amateur leagues. Actually, it might, because it'll change how often we have to play games to stay eligible for our leagues, because there's now 2 splits, right? Yeah. Okay, so that's the change. That's the patch. I can see literally nothing that affects, like, IBS. and again, like, hold on, let me think. Yeah, literally nothing that affects IBS. Very, very little that affects, like, the platinum area. A couple things here and there that might shift a few priorities at higher levels. But overall, my predictors say that most of these changes are very low impact. We have to investigate Jax to see if it's more flexible, of course. Like, we've already been through how we feel about all of these champions. And to reiterate on the items, Axiom Arc is probably, you know, it's still probably not a very compelling option for most champions, but at least it's not, like, actually useless. Horizon focus pick conditions do not change. It just made my math easier, and you only build this if you're hitting hard frontliners. Jack Show, I am willing to bet it's significantly weaker on actual bruiser users who were just building one tank item, but I'm not willing to say it's bad until we actually test it out. That would be stupid of me. But I do think actual tank users, excepting those who gain significant damage from how Jack Show works, like Rammus and Cassante, all of those champions should probably be opting into Radiant Virtue as a baseline. Rod of Ages, is better at doing what it does, and you should consider it on its core users, but, like, be specific about who its core users are, because that, like, Rod of Ages users need base damage in their kit, right? Archangels is the biggest change of the patch. Like, this opens up so much. This probably changes mage power levels. Like, we have to start investigating this a lot. This is awesome. This is great. And then Fimbulwinter doesn't change anything. Tenacity, we kind of just make a footnote in our brain, and, like, maybe it influences some of those, like, Alacrity versus Tenacity conversations that we were having on some champions already. But Diana, big nerfs potentially, since Diana may not abuse tank mythics as hard as Jack Show. Yeah, I would say so. Okay, I will say there is a universe for IBG Diana that is a small possibility, because Diana just likes this extra stickiness if she's opting into Nashor's builds. But she's definitely not going to be nearly as unkillable. And Diana used to be a Rod of Ages user, but, like, ugh, it's so awkward for her nowadays. Like, so awkward. Maybe we check it out on mid lane Diana. I don't know. I'm not sold. So yeah, that's the patch. I have a few things that I need to develop predictors for still. Like, it's so hard for me to assess movement speed changes, guys. Yeah, I don't love mid lane Diana, but that's fine. I think we need to keep an open mind for when things change, and we can keep an eye out for when picks like that might have a resurgence, right? Okay, is there anything else that anybody wants to talk about? Like, any last minute things? I don't have a lot of time. I kind of went over my time budget on this patch note rundown. What were Xayah opinions? So an attack speed ratio change is the biggest change you can give to an auto attacker. It is the most impactful type of change for their overall DPS. Xayah's main competitors in her niche are Aphelios and Draven. Those champions are hard to play at low levels of play, so Xayah should be in pools at low levels of play. And I'm actually kind of scared about her damage when you're playing into something like Nocturne, like something really committal and really, really dive oriented, right? Something that can't just get in, blow her ult, get out, right? I think Xayah probably has a bit more of her own niche now, especially in IBS Gold Platinum levels play. And amateur players should definitely keep her on their radar. But only in the right niche, right? Her niche is more powerful. Yeah, her niche is noticeably more powerful, I think. Like, and I kind of brushed it off at first until I read this ratio part. And oh my god, wait, it's a ratio change? What? Yeah. This is absolutely priority number 1 to test, though. Twisted Fate. Priority number 1. We need to find out immediately if this champion hits a new wave clear breakpoint. I agree. But this is like the scariest type of buff he can get, right? This is the scariest type of buff you can give Twisted Fate. Wave clear? Oh god. So we need to check him out. Because this is either nothing or a lot. And there's no in between. Does it hit a wave clear breakpoint or not? If yes, oh god. If no, champ still sucks. Mages as a whole. Yeah, but TF isn't, is the thing. Like, TF can't... Oh, that's true, actually. That's... Well, okay, so it's not really about Twisted Fate pushing the wave while his opponent can't. It's about Twisted Fate deleting the wave as fast as possible so that he can buy a timer to use his tempo cheats before his opponent can respond. Like, Twisted Fate just needs to be able to match enemy wave clear, I think. That's actually it's a good point, but... No, I don't think Seraph's translates to a wave clear boost. No. Seraph shouldn't translate to a wave clear boost. It shouldn't. And Rod of Ages isn't a wave clear boost. It's not getting buffed in that way. Seraph's is probably just the same wave clear that Shadow Flame would be. Okay, is that it? Any, like, last-minute questions? Like, I do have to run. I had 3 tasks in 3 hours, and I'm 1.5 hours in now, so... Fuck. This was the biggest one, though. This was the biggest one. We good? Okay. I'm gonna edit this down for YouTube, actually. I've never done that before. I've never, like, actually put a patch note rundown on my main YouTube channel, so... Everybody, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to love yourselves, respect each other. I will see you all later after my extra tasks and my drills, because we're going to have a lore stream later. So, thank you for watching, everybody.